Hello and welcome to another episode of Mole in the Morning in the Gaming News. Today for the 27th of October 2022. My name is ChaosMole and this one is not live recorded. As you probably know, I always do a live show where I talk to my community, then we are doing the gaming news, and then we are playing video games on my main channel. But today, unfortunately, there is no live stream. I have so many other things to prepare that I wanted to at least put some gaming news in here because we have a lot. Like seriously. It's apparently everyone decided to dump their gaming news before the weekend here, and I just wanted to do this quickly before I'm going back to all the other things I'm already working on. So let us jump right into it. And I would say we are starting with an interesting news of a new game which came out, I think, last week, Marvel Snap. If you have played it on mobile for a while, you might be like, wait, what do you mean by it came out last week? I've been playing Marvel Snap for a while on my mobile device. Yes, what I mean is it came out in early access on Steam, but it has been on mobile for a while. And the interesting part here is that apparently Marvel Snap is making $2 million on a weekly basis in revenue since its release, which is pretty good for a new studio and for a new card game. This is made by Second Dinner. If you have never heard of them, a lot of the people working at this studio are the original Hearthstone creators. Ben Brode is in there, which is like the head figure of it. He was like the main creator of Hearthstone, right? Keep in mind, Hearthstone started out with like 5 people or something. And yeah, like the original circle of Hearthstone left Blizzard a few years ago, and they were working on Marvel Snap. So it seems like that this has been pretty successful for them, because $2 million per week is nothing to sneeze on. And congratulations to them. Let's hope this is keeping up. I hear a lot of people talking about this game. I have only watched it a bit, and it's quite confusing because they're really trying to do different things, but it's fast and it feels good. Like a lot of people say, if you were looking for a card game which puts away with those lengthy fights and like rounds where you are just building up things and you want constant action on your board, then apparently Marvel Snap is really good. And most important, it's not one of those pay-to-win card games. You can't actually buy card packs for real money. The only thing you can buy is apparently like skins and battle passes and all that, but you cannot buy the cards. You have to play the game, which is like really, really interesting, because most even digital card games are just using the old model of real life cards, right, where you have to buy the packs to be to have a chance in the higher rankings and all that, and to be competitive. And Marvel Snap just says, nah, we are not doing this. Like, if you want to spend money on us, it's for skins. And to be honest, that's pretty amazing. Next news. Oh god. Hideo Kojima had a little bit of an interview as of recent with The Guardian, and he was of course mentioning his upcoming projects. And one of his next games is, and I quote him here, almost like a new medium. Look, Kojima-san, I love you. I love the Metal Gear series. I didn't like Death Stranding, unfortunately. That thing did completely go over my head. And you have promised us something similar with Death Stranding. And yeah, like Kojima is always a little bit like the visionary, right? He sees a lot of things, and in the end, it's not that groundbreaking as he tries to make it look like. Not because he is trying to trick you, because he is like a real visionary, but thankfully he is one of those visionaries who is listening to the people around him. As we have heard, like he basically has the people who keep him in check when he is like having one of his crazy ideas again. And yeah, we will see how new this really is and how different it really is. And he is also saying that if this succeeds, it will turn things around, not just in the gaming industry, but in the movie industry as well. I'm like, oh, okay, like, do you sit in a cinema and play your game or something like that? I don't know. Like, didn't we have that in the past? Like, we will see. Like, again, Kojima has always those grand ideas, and then you can simmer it down to like a specific genre which already exists, or they're blending together, like Death Stranding, right? It's the famous walking simulator till after 10 hours of gameplay, it basically transforms into a Metal Gear. Like, it was one of the flabbergasting experience where you had this slight horror environment and you have to walk around, you have to run and all that, right? And then after 10 hours, they're like, hey, did anyone try guns against those monsters? And people were like, guns? What? And boom, you now have guns. And it's like, oh, okay, well, escalated quickly, interesting. So we will see about this. Oh, this one is an interesting one. So, wow, this is coming at a time I can just see as a bad omen, but the co-founders of Rocksteady, Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, are leaving the studio effective immediately. Which is kind of crazy because the founders are leaving their studios at some point. Okay, that's like happens. It's never a good sign, but it happens. But this very moment is a really odd look. Because, well, as you probably know, Gotham Knights just came out last week. It's not made by Rocksteady. I know a lot of people misunderstand that or don't know about this, but it's not made by Rocksteady. It's not made by the original creators of the Batman series. This is made by Warner Bros. Montreal, different studio. But a lot of people have been talking about when Rocksteady is bringing out their new Batman game, and they haven't really released the game in 8 years. So people are like, hey, like, Rocksteady, where are you? What are you doing? Like, we just got this kind of mediocre Batman game. Like, what are you up to? And then they are not really talking about what they are up to. They are just announcing that, hey, we are leaving the studio, right? And this message is actually coming by David Haddad, who says, I have some important news to share with you about Rocksteady Studios. Co-founders and studio heads Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker have made the decision to leave the studio. We are very proud to have worked with them, yada, yada, yada. And this is just praising them. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that, well, they are working now on the Suicide Squad. Right, Rocksteady is working on that. I always forget that. Like, Suicide Squad is like a weird game for me because it shows up and then it disappears for a year again. It shows up briefly and then disappears for a year again, and I'm just always forgetting about it. Sorry about that. But yeah, they're leaving now, which is... We will see how that goes, but it doesn't make the best impression under all those circumstances. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Speaking about not making a great impression, creative, I always say creative, even though it's creative. It's like when you learn it wrong once, you would do that mistake for all eternity. But the creative. There we go again. The Creative Assembly has put out a message saying that we have been made aware of deeply concerning and serious allegations regarding a former CA employee. We recognize how important and often difficult it is for individuals to speak up about these experiences, and we welcome those who feel able to do so. We are dedicated to providing a safe and inclusive environment for our people and ensuring they are heard. It is clear we need to do better. We're investigating this matter through an external party and fully understand what happened. So basically, they're omitting a little bit of the things which happened. One of the former workers talked about a very toxic culture there, and that she was basically sexual harassed and assaulted even of some of the workers, and that was one of the main reasons why she left, because people couldn't keep their hands to themselves at the workplace. And again, this is what they are forgetting to mention here a little bit, but yeah, that's what happened behind the scenes. And if you're like Creative Assembly, what did they do? Total War. Mostly Total War. Yes, I know they are working on some other games, but this is the series people will quickly recognize. It's a Total War series. So keep that in mind. So it's just like, yeah, this is really unfortunate. I hope they're figuring out what's going on and can do better. I have said this before, and I will say it again. The gaming industry as a whole at this point is that. Like, I don't think there's a single studio, like bigger studio, who doesn't have this going on at some point. And it will happen to much more studios in the foreseeable future. And the most important part is, how do they react to this? How do they act on it? Like Riot Games is a wonderful example, because they acted on it and they really cut a lot of people out, and they completely changed how they are working. They have been doing that. And tons of workers are now like, yeah, wow, Riot Games in the last 3 years was completely moving away from the bro culture and became like a really good working place. And they even like had multiple external companies checking in on them and lawyers and all that. And it seems like now that Riot Games is on a path of redemption, which is great to see. And then we have Ubisoft or Activision Blizzard, who are more or less like fighting the whole thing or trying to hide it. And it's just like, ugh, you look at it and it's icky, you know. So again, it really comes down to, in the end, how the company will handle those allegations and what they will do in the foreseeable future. Now, next news, and this is an interesting one. So now we are getting a little bit closer to the bigger news. There have been two big news for the Calisto Protocol, and this one is fascinating. So the Japanese version of the Calisto Protocol has been cancelled. Yep. It will not be discontinued, and at present we have decided that we will not be able to pass the Zero, which is the rating agency in Japan, and if we change the content, we will not be able to provide the experience that the player expects. I would appreciate if you could understand everyone in Japan. We will refund those who are pre-ordered. So this is super interesting, and I know that a lot of people are like, it's okay, so they didn't get a rating in Japan. Why are we talking about this? Isn't this like a side note? No, it's not. It's actually pretty big, because so Japan has been really strict when it comes to gore, and they have become more and more strict in how much gore is allowed in the games. And they're literally going to developers and tell them, you want to be on our market, you censor your ass. And this even happens with Japanese games. Like Resident Evil is heavily censored in Japan, believe it or not. And normally everyone agreed on, yeah, okay, we comply to this, right? We would just follow this because Japan is a very important and big market to us, and we would just follow through with this, right? And the Calisto Protocol is like one of the first who says, no, we will not do that anymore. Screw you, and people will find a way to basically get the uncensored version. And this is a hot topic right now in Japan, believe it or not, because a lot of developers and publishers have felt that Zero has been overstepping their boundaries a little bit, and that in the last few years got a bit too radical. That they are pointing out things which were completely fine 5 years ago when it came to gore and blood effects on the screen or something like that. And now they are just like clamping down on everything when there is just a tiny tinsy blood on the screen. And people are getting really, really annoyed by this. And developers feel like the effort they have to put in to make the game available in Japan is not worth it anymore. But till this point, they just stayed silent on this. They just said, "Yeah, well, what can we do? I mean, I will not take the first step here to not release our game not in Japan, so we are just complying with this." And that now the Calisto Protocol, which has a big publisher Krafton behind them, is the first one speaking out about this and says, "No, we are not doing this anymore. We have enough." That's a big deal. And it seems like more and more publishers and developers at least talking about this and making clear that they feel similar. So we will see that this might actually hail some changes to Zero, and that they might actually change their approach, hopefully, on how much they have to censor for the Japanese market. Will the censorship ever go away? No, it's a cultural thing, right? Even though, interestingly enough, the most bought versions in Japan are the highest age rating. So normally they are releasing like 2 versions in Japan, the lower age rating and the higher age rating version. And the one which sells the most is the higher age rating version. So we have to see, but it's still a very interesting development in Japan. And this has definitely done some waves, to say the least. Speaking of the Calisto Protocol, there has been another news, and this one was an interview with Glenn Schofield. Schofield? I never know how to pronounce his name. But he was also talking about crunch. As you might remember, a few weeks ago, he made a pretty stupid tweet where they basically said, hey, like, people are coming in every day. They're working for 11 hours a day, 12 hours a day. They love it. They're coming in over the weekend. They're basically forsaking their families. And everyone loves this because I love it. And nobody is forced. I was like, dude, you're writing the paychecks for those people. Like nobody is forced. It's like, yeah, but when the dude who is writing my paychecks is doing this stuff, maybe I should follow suit, right? And he now says in a recent interview that he was talking about the backlash of the embracing of the crunch culture, taking full responsibility for it, and promising that it won't happen again. I can tell you this, I'm going to make sure that's not a thing that happens in our next project or any future project. And it's like, yeah, good. I'm actually kind of curious if people reached out, like, I'm pretty sure that some developers reached out to him afterwards and were like, hey, Glenn, no, we actually do not want to do the crunch. It's really tough. Like, working overtime for weeks and months, it's not a good thing. Especially, like, this is sometimes what people forget, but especially in an industry which is building so much on having people being creative. How can you be creative if you are working 12 hours a day for 2 months without any weekends? Like, no human, most humans can do that. Like, there are probably some people who enjoy that, who can do that. But somebody who has been working in a lot of jobs and has seen all those things happening, I can mostly tell you it's never a good thing, and this has to disappear. You have to plan better. You have to plan your games better. You have to plan your scope of the game better. Like, there has been now multiple games which have been created without any crunch. And they were good games, and they were doing well. Right? So, stop crunching, man. It's not necessary. Stop it. I'm waiting half a year longer or a year longer on a game if the people who worked on this game didn't work themselves to death. That would be appreciated. And if the publisher says, nah, you have to finish this game in 2 years, then the publisher is shit for you. And you should probably find somebody else. But that whole mentality has to stop. Like, seriously. Now, let's have a little bit of a Sony Xbox news. Well, first of all, Sony only, because PlayStation London Studios has been announcing that they are now working on a new project. We don't really know the name of the new project, but London Studios has been known for very experimental ideas. They were working on SingStar, iToy, Wonderbook, PlayStation Home, VR stuff. Like, they really love to push the boundaries of gaming and try out new things. Not saying it always works out for them, but they are definitely pushing it. And now they have been announcing that they are working on a new game. It is currently an untitled, probably as a project name or something, but an untitled online co-op combat game set in fantasy London. And this is just a game. Like, it's not anything weird, crazy VR stuff. They gave us one picture, and this is an art picture. So this is apparently how the game looks. You can clearly see Big Ben in the background and a dragon and some demon girl and some leprechauns and goblins and like some crazy stuff going on here, which looks really interesting, especially the goblin hacker. It looks very interesting. But yeah, this is developed for PlayStation 5 exclusively. They did not mention the PC, but they also didn't say it's not coming to PC. So this might be, as you might know, Sony has been announcing that definitely live service games and online games is something they are planning to release day and date with the PlayStation 5 version. So they are still not on board with the whole idea to release their single player games day and date, like God of War Ragnarok, right? That is not coming out on PC for at least a year or maybe even 2 years or God knows how long. But they made it very clear that with those type of projects, they might be actually pretty open to release them on the PC as well. So we will see what this is. I'm kind of curious, but this is still pretty early on, and they will try some new stuff. Like, this is not just your standard fantasy online game they are trying to do, but they are trying out new things because that's their MO, right? They've been doing this for years, that they are just trying to push the boundaries for what works and what doesn't. And I'm curious to see that. Like, awesome. Probably would take another 3 years though, because the problem is right now that tons of development studios are announcing their games years and years now before they're coming out because they need developers. Yep. It's basically a good hiring strategy. So, yeah. Now, you might ask, okay, but you said that there is an Xbox news here as well. And yes, there is. Because good old Phil Spencer had multiple interviews in the past few days on podcasts and magazines, and he was talking about Xbox and how Xbox is doing, because they also released their quarterly numbers, and they are doing pretty well. And let's talk about a few things he talked about. The first thing is that he said that Game Pass is confirmed to be profitable, and that Game Pass is about 15% of the gaming revenue for Microsoft. That is quite high. Keep in mind, Game Pass started just a few years ago. It's still in its infants, all things considered. And again, I know there are still some people who are saying, oh, it's not profitable and they are like burning money. And it's like, no, they're not burning money on this. Like, it is so wild to me that people are using Netflix, Disney Plus, and all the other streaming websites for TV shows and movies, and nobody is questioning how profitable those streaming services are, right? But when Microsoft is doing it for gaming, people are like, this can't work. It's like, why? It's the same principle. Like, movies and TV shows are freaking expensive to make. Have you seen the cost of a movie? They still rival video games easily. So why shouldn't this work for gaming? Just because you don't want to? That's not an argument. So this is really going well for them. Game Pass growth on console has slowed some. PC growth is incredible. Makes sense. I mean, he said it himself. The reality is pretty simple. There is a fine amount of consoles out there. And that fine amount is how many Xbox consoles Microsoft is selling in the end. PC? Well, PC though. Especially if you were using it on your tablets and iPhones or whatever, right? Because the PC version is also working on your mobile devices. Then the whole thing looks very different. And so I can see that Xbox Game Pass for Xbox will stop growing in the next 2 years. But PC is just at the beginning. I mean, it's kind of unfair to say it, but that is the reason why I truly think that the PC Game Pass is already so much better than the console version. Like, the amount of games and the variety of games we do have on the PC Game Pass is so much better. It is so much better. And it is also pretty easy for Microsoft to strike a deal with developers and say, this game is coming to Game Pass. Whereas for people who are releasing their games on consoles only, sometimes it's much harder to do this, right? Because you have to see, is this game even coming to the Xbox console? Is it an exclusive? Did they sign some contracts? Like, it is much, much harder to do this than just for the PC, where everyone is releasing everything. So, yeah, makes totally sense. Prices on some things will have to go up at some point. So he became a little bit more clear what he meant with that. This can mean console price, the gaming prices, or Xbox Game Pass. Not all three all together, but or. Not and, but or. And he made it pretty clear it will not happen before the holidays. So it will not happen this year. They wanted to make sure that this holiday, like, the prices of all the things they're pushing out stay the same: video games, consoles, and the Game Pass. Afterwards, they have to see. They have to take a look at it, and they have to make the decision what they want to increase and what makes the most sense. I wouldn't be surprised if they're increasing the price for Game Pass, even though this has massive growth potential right now, so they might leave that alone to grow a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if they're just going the direction good old Sony has been already going, and finally increasing the price tag of video games by $10. And I'm really hoping that, well, it will happen for the European version as itself. So it will probably be the games. Probably Starfield. Let's be real here. Starfield, Redfall will probably be the first games where they say $70 please, or well, $80 please if you're living in Europe, get effed. And more people will actually flock to Game Pass. So yeah, wouldn't be too surprised to see them finally increase the price tag on the games, which was to be expected. So this is a very interesting news, and this is the last one for today. Electronic Arts Germany, hey, it's my country, woo, has announced that they will no longer sell any physical copies of their video games in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Scandinavia. So you can only buy them digitally going forward. Here's the news. It's on a German website. So if I'm opening this up and show this to you, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. I have read it, and I can say that's exactly what's in there. But yeah, this is kind of crazy. And EA cites the ongoing shift from physical goods to digital downloads continues to have a negative impact on sales development, and an economic restructuring was initiated and will no longer generate any sales with packaged goods. So what that basically says is, especially in Germany, the number of digital over physical was always pretty high. And then with COVID and the restrictions we had here, it just got evaporated. Like the last 2 years, thanks to COVID, nobody was buying their games really physically anymore, because you can just buy them for the same price online. Besides of Nintendo games. Nintendo games are still cheaper here physically than digitally, which is absolutely crazy, but different topic. Yeah, but that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Like, the end of an era. And we'll see how that goes. Of course, keep in mind, this is right now only for Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Scandinavia. In the other regions, it's still happening. But let's be honest here. I expect that moving forward, most developers in the next 5 to 10 years will completely move away from physical copies, and they will only do digital because it costs too much. There are too many cut-offs, right? They, like, keep in mind, this is also not cheap for them. Like, you have to ship those copies, right? You have to ship them from A to B. You have to create them, yada, yada, yada. And then most of the time, you know what's in those plastic things? It's not even the game anymore. It's literally just a client for the game you have to download. You get a key, you enter that key, and the game is downloading at home anyways. It's like, yeah, why would I do this? I still remember Metal Gear Solid 5. This was one of the big, like, first shocks for a lot of people when they bought Phantom Pain, got home, wanted to install the game, and the only thing which was on the DVD was the Steam client. And the game was like, yeah, you want to play the game? Well, install Steam and download it. I was like, wait, what? Crazy stuff there. But yeah, it will happen more and more, and it would just take a little bit longer depending on how long or how many people will actually like buy physical games in your country. But it will happen at the end. Yep. So, with that said, we are done with the gaming news. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, we will be back tomorrow with another Mole in the Morning in the Gaming News on my main channel at youtube.com/@ChaosMole. Yes, that's a new YouTube thing. You're now putting an username behind the slash, and then you're directly getting to the channel. Look, it's a new YouTube thing. Get used to it. But we will have that tomorrow there as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, and more importantly, don't forget to subscribe to get your daily gaming news besides weekends, because it's weekend. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow. We will also, if you're interested, play some Frozen Flame Open Beta, which is a new survival game which looks absolutely fantastic and very interesting in what they are trying to do. So make sure to stop by tomorrow and check it out. With that said, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.